Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Lazorix. This episode, I'm going to talk about formations. Going from beginner level knowledge to intermediate and then expert. To start, you'll want to go to Hall of War. To begin, you'll go down to Formation Preview. This will just give you a good idea kind of how it works in general. At the top right, you can see this little exclamation point with a few pointers, but it doesn't give you all the information. Number one, units will be arranged in different positions in different formations. To unlock shooter and rider formation, you will have to research corresponding text under the formation tab in the research center. And third, unlocked formations can be used by visiting formation set, marching, and wall defense pages. So we can go look at the research center because the game starts you out with the fighter formation. Quite a ways in, you'll see this formations tab right here. And if you go down to about the middle, you'll see the shooter formation and rider formation. You have to do all these maxed out before you can do these two right here. Where to change and view the formations. If you go to Troop Form Set in the Hall of War, right above the formation preview, and under your formation sets, when you're creating one, down at the bottom right, you can just click this little button here with the axes. This is for fighter, rider, and shooter formation, so you can see it there. It also mentions it in the wall as well. So under fortification overview, you'll see at the bottom left, you have your fighter, rider, and shooter formation. And lastly, on the world map, anytime you go to attack, you can see down again the bottom right, you got your fighter, rider, and shooter formations. But what do they do? So as you're getting further into the game, this information will be really important. So you'll notice that the fighters, and then you got your riders, and then your shooters and cars. Obviously, vehicles don't have their own formation because they're always standing in the back line. Going into more intermediate level information of formations, when you're doing a rally, the bulk of the results is determined by the troops that stand on the front lines here. Which is why if your main troop type is a rider or let's say shooter, it is very important to try and quickly unlock the rider formation or shooter formation because you already start the game with the fighter formation. And you want your troops standing in the front so they can take the bulk of the damage, and your stats are better than those per se that are sending other kinds of troops in that layer or rally. Looking at an example right on the right hand side of the screen, this player did a rally against a level 42 zombie layer. Their troop type is shooter. The thing about it is they did not have the shooter formation. They had the fighter formation, and we can see that right at the top here next to their name that has the axes. And what happened was pretty bad. Their total wounded was very high, and their troops are strong enough to carry the rally. What happened was other players sent fighter troops, and their fighters stood in the front of the rally So that resulted in a very high wounded count. And that is because their fighters cannot or are not strong enough for this level of rally. Because this player is using shooters with the fighter formation that you start with in the game, it's totally fine if you go that route. Just make sure all the other players joining your rally at the start of the game until you have formations unlocked are only sending cars, or you can call them vehicles if you want as well, because as you can see in this preview, the vehicles stand behind the shooters, so they're totally safe. Knowing this player used shooters as their main troop type, we can actually click play here and see what unfolds. So the other players sent their fighters and they're standing on the front lines. So the bulk of the results are going to be based off the troops that stand in the front of your rallies. The player here has very strong shooters, so they should have been standing in front. If they had the shooter formation unlocked, it would have been okay that those other players sent fighters, because now you can see in the preview here, the shooters would be in front, the fighters in the middle, and the riders and cars in the back, so on. It would have been just fine. For level 2 intermediate level information on formations, just to recap, if you're using the fighter formation, your alliance members that join your zombie layer rallies or other rallies against other players, make sure they're sending anything except fighters. They can send riders, they can send shooters or cars. If you're a rider main, they can send shooters, they can send fighters or cars. Those are all safe. And of course, if you're a shooter main, fighters, riders, and cars are safe. If you're beginning the game and you only have fighter formation and you're a fighter, then riders, shooters, and cars are safe. If you're a rider, only shooters and cars are safe to send to rallies. If you're a shooter main and you're at the beginning of the game and you don't have formations unlocked yet, people can only send vehicles to your rallies. Finally, we're moving on to level 3, expert level formation knowledge. You can see here there is a player attacking a level 47 layer. They're using the rider formation. So the shooters, fighters, and cars will be standing behind the riders. So the results will generally be in bulk decided by the riders in this case. Interesting fact about this case was that 2 players both sent riders to this rally. The initiator and a supporter. They were the same troop type, but the wounded in this case were still relatively low. The only reason his was a little higher is because the march size was a little bit larger than the person who set the rally. And also because if you look at their kills, they're very close together. Because their stats are very similar, they can work together to kill the layer without taking a lot of wounded. Just like I was explaining earlier, this player's main troop type was shooters, and there were fighters sent to the rally that stood in front of his shooters, so the bulk of the damage was decided by those fighters. The same case can be applied if a stronger player joins the rally and their fighters stand in front of your troops. So the rally will still turn out just fine because their troops are strong enough to carry the rally. Now, there is some information that formations does not tell you in the information here or show you in the preview here. And that is, yes, if you're using certain formations, those troops will stand in the front, but in general, it's only talking about those troops. But what goes beyond that is the troop tiers and which troop tiers stand in front of other tiers. So if we're only looking at the fighter troops at the front line, if you can imagine tiers 1 through 13, there is actually a calculation in the game that puts certain tiers in front of the other ones. And it literally starts from 1 and goes to 13. Lower tier troops stand in front of higher tier troops. This is where it gets complicated, right? So if this player sends tier 8 troops and their tier 12 troops, and you still come out with low wounded, even though another player in the rally sends their fighters, the bulk of the damage will be decided by the strongest player's lowest tier troops. Now, I know that's hard to understand and it's quite complicated. Probably why they don't explain it. It's easier for most people just to go by the troop type, because you can also go by not only the troop type but the troop tier to add an extra level of complexity. The reason this player does that is because all the players in the alliance can join their rally with any troop type they want, and it will turn out just fine, which is great. Personally, I don't like carrying around lower tier troops because if you look, that will affect your wall. So if I have lower tier riders standing in front of my higher tier riders, then I could take a lot more damage if I got hit. Just like zombie layers, the same set of functions applies in other events as well. Just like if you're attacking a player or attacking a tower in Alliance Clash, Res War, Wasteland Conquest, and it's a regular rally, we can see here this player takes a lot of damage because the troops on the front line here are his weakest troop type. In this case, you'll notice there's no heroes appearing at the top, and that is because the captain of the rally did not have any heroes. Also, they're not a fighter main, and you can see that right here. They did not send. There's no heroes. And these other players that have riders in the rally are really strong, but these riders are standing behind his fighters. You'll notice? So, the weakest troop at the front, the rally is going to incur a lot of damage. It's going to hurt a lot. In this case, they lost all their troops in the rally. And as you can see on my end, I have my riders. This person sent riders. This person sent riders, and this person sent riders. But these players have boosted up their riders, so it is their main troop type, which means they will handle the damage a lot better in the battle. Just like we saw earlier, that zombie layer where 2 players sent riders that were similar in strength, so the wounded was not as bad. The other thing is if you're doing super rallies. In these events, a lot of players like to do super rallies because what happens is it throws out all that other information I was just talking about. It throws it all out the window. Gone. Burn it, throw it in the trash, dumpster, it's gone. None of that other information really matters that much. Because when you're talking about super rallies, it generally means the whole rally is like a single march. And in this case, it turns all these troops, these T8s, T9, T11 fighters, T10, they are all given my stats. So the rally is much safer for everybody involved. You cannot do this against zombie layer rallies. So it's a little bit easier to join in. You'll notice, just like we talked about earlier, there's formations, and then within those formations are where the troop tiers stand within that formation. I have T12. You'll notice there are T8 riders that were in this rally that were the first to face these T13s. And that's really important because regardless of my stats, the troop tier 8s themselves are much weaker than these tier 13s. So the damage incurred is going to still be quite higher than what it normally would be if there were no other no other riders in the rally. And you can see that right at the top here. We took a bunch of damage, 103 million might loss. Granted, this player was really strong, but the damage incurred was heavily decided by this troop tier 8s that were in my rider rally, because those riders were the first to meet the enemy riders, not my riders. So they probably went through those T8s and then went through the T9 and then went through the T10s and then the 11s and then finally got to mine. And then after mine got to the T11 fighters, and that was pretty much the end of it. Granted, in this case, even though his stats were much higher than mine, the T8 caused a lot of damage, even in a super rally. So even if you're doing super rallies, it's good to make sure that if they're a lower tier troop, make sure they're sending something other than what you're leading the rally with. So there you have it. There's some general and technical information about formations. You can apply this to your sanctuary wall when you're doing zombie layer rallies, when you're doing rallies against other players, when you're doing rallies against turrets, or even still, if you're doing super rallies, make sure to pay attention to the troop tiers being sent to your rallies, because that will have a big effect on it too. Even though it's a super rally, that is pretty much the basis information that you can start with, especially if you just started the game. It'll really help you a lot, and your co-members as well when they're trying to figure out what to send. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope this helped. Make sure to leave a comment down below if I missed anything, and we'll see you all next time. Peace out. Have a great one. Peace.